account of life at Death Valley.
That seems kind of like a long one.
Yeah, it was more just a statement instead of a warm-up. I feel
Where
like
did you find that statement?
Welcome to Folie, Deux, the podcast where we rate and rant all things spooky, but it's still just movies, honestly.
Movies.
Yeah,
It's
just movies.
Just
And
movies.
Jessica, as you know, what we do for each episode is we spin the spooky spinner. What is the spooky spinner?
The spooky spinner?
Yeah.
We have a whole list of random movies that we throw into a spinner and we spin it.
We spin the shit out of it.
We spin the shit out of it. That app, we press that button, and then it tells us what to watch. It tells us how to live our lives.
Interesting. And what kind of movies are that? Good and bad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what did we get for this episode?
We got It Comes at Night.
It Comes at Night. That, like, the Red Door movie.
It looks like, if you didn't know, it could be... Is it... Who directed this?
Oh, the director?
Yeah.
The director was Trey Edward Schultz.
Yeah, it kind of... When you see the Red Door... The first time I saw the trailer, I was like, is this another M. Night Shyamalan movie?
It does seem like that, yeah. And I think that's kind of like the downfall of this movie initially when it first came out was the marketing and the how things were described. We watch a movie, obviously, but we also watched the trailer afterwards to see where the confusion was. And even after watching the trailer, I mean, it's...
The trailer doesn't tell you a lot. I think it leads the viewer to expect something than what the movie actually delivers, which could be what they wanted. You know, they wanted to challenge your expectations, but...
I also think, like, the title itself doesn't help either with the cause. So, like, this movie, I mean, I'll just say right now, I think we both like this movie, actually, which is kind of a stark contrast compared to what I remember going through in the first initial watching. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think I was kind of let down when I first watched it, too.
And so I that's why we watched the trailer, and I think we needed to watch the trailer. And moving forward, maybe we should just keep watching trailers.
I like the idea of us watching, and I think we should watch the trailers before we watch the movie.
So this movie was like in 2017, which wasn't that far away. It does seem like forever, but it really wasn't. But I do remember, like I said, being upset after watching this movie and just being like, what a joke. What comes? Nothing. But that's not the point of the movie. And after watching the movie, I think that's evident that that's not what the main message was of this specific film. Like
we were saying with the trailer, the setup, you think you're going to see kind of a zombie monster movie. And there's even a line in one of the trailers that we watched that's kind of actually spells out man turns into monster.
Yeah.
So that was, I definitely thought it was going to be a monster movie, but
it's a different kind of monster, really.
That isn't the scariest part, I think, of the movie, is like the actual monsters.
Right. So I guess before we jump into the movie, let's just talk about
our feelings.
Some of the backgrounds. Let's talk about our feelings. So it came out in 2017. So it was a winner of the iHorror Movie Award for Best Indie Horror Film. And we were talking about this, and it's not really a horror film.
It's...
at least a conventional horror film.
Yeah, it's a suspenseful movie, for sure. The drama, like you said. But yeah, I mean, it lands in the spooky category, for sure, because you get the creeps. But I mean... They talk about, like, because I've read a little bit about it too, and they mention, like, oh, it's not your typical horror film. So they are kind of labeling it as a horror film, but I think a traditionalist wouldn't.
Right. The director / writer is, like we said, Trey Edward Schultz. He didn't necessarily direct too much prior to this, mainly just short films, but also was the director and writer of Kershaw and Waves. Waves came out in 2019, and it has some pretty high reviews. And then the cast... I mean, the top billing is Joel Edgerton, in which, for me, he was the most recognizable. Yeah, so, I mean, it's a really small cast of characters, and it's the world itself. We don't see a lot of people. We only see 3 other people and then 2 other people. So, or no.
Like, there's a collection of probably 9 people altogether that you see in this film.
Right.
And
we're
the majority,
too,
the majority of it, you see 6 people.
So I guess just before we jump into it, too, the way that they have the movie described is secure within a desolate home as an unnatural threat terrorizes the world. A man has established a tenuous domestic order with his wife and son. Then a desperate young family arrives seeking refuge. Would you say that's fair?
No, I mean, it's,
it doesn't sound very
it
doesn't
fun sound intriguing at all.
No,
it sounds way more like a drama.
Yeah,
at that point.
Hey, let's talk about what we think about it. Jessica, what do you think about this movie?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I think, like we said before, when I first saw it, I don't think I liked it that much. I don't remember enjoying it as much as I did, but watching it again, and I think this is only the second time that I've seen this film. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I was pretty entertained throughout the whole movie, and I felt for all of the characters in the movie.
Yeah,
which I think is kind of rare sometimes.
Yeah, I tend to like movies that have a smaller cast of people. It's a lot easier to really understand the world for me.
And their relationships.
And the relationships, yeah, exactly. And working together, and they have to work together in this world. I like this movie too. There's some things about it that kind of bother me because it goes unanswered. But I thought the acting was really, really good with just about everyone, even the kid, which is really hard to kind of come across.
He was really young. I'm terrible at guessing kids' age. How old would you guess?
Like was? 16. I'm just kidding. I don't know, like 9. Less than that.
I think that's
No, not 9.
Yeah,
that's even worse. Like 6. God.
Okay, so we're both bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I thought everyone.
Everyone did a great job. So good for you.
Good for you. But yeah, I think having that perspective of just being like, because I also only watched it once prior to this, and after watching that once, I'm like, sucks. Done. Move on. There's other stuff I need to watch.
I remember being kind of bored.
Yeah.
But this time I was.
It's because I think we're us coming into a different perspective, because with most of these movies that we watch now for the show, we kind of come in with a clean slate, or at least try to level where it's like, this movie's going to suck or it's not going to suck. I mean, we can't help that sometimes, but we're also coming at it objectively.
We've seen a lot of movies lately.
Yeah. So,
and I think the word quarantine has a new meaning for us. It hits home
exactly. I think what was happening in this movie is a little bit more relevant to what's happening today. So it was a little easier for us to kind of sympathize. We're almost like critiquing how they're doing certain things too, like quarantining. And,
absolutely.
Yeah, which they do fuck up in this movie, and you're just like, how do you not?
Yeah.
But anyways, I liked it. So with that, let's jump into it.
Okay. The film opens and the setting is in the middle of this forest. This family has a very large kind of cabin-y looking house. They're pretty isolated. They don't have really any neighbors along. I think there's only one kind of gravel road that's nearby them. So they're fairly isolated, and we come in on this family that is comprised of the mom and dad, who are Sarah and Paul, and their 17-year-old son, Travis. And the first shots we have also are of Sarah's father, Bud, who you can tell he's a grandpa, he's older. But what we see is that he has all of these sores around his body, and he has this very raspy breathing. So we can tell that he's sick with something bad. And we hear Sarah kind of talking to him in a very calm way, in a calm manner, just saying, "It's okay, Dad, let go, it's fine." So we're kind of taken in and out from Bud's perspective of consciousness. And we then see Paul and Travis put on some gas masks, some gloves, and put Bud, who's still alive, which surprised me when we were even watching the movie. He's still alive, he's still breathing, in this kind of wheelbarrow, and take him out to the woods. And they say their goodbyes. Then Paul ends up shooting Bud in the head, and they put him in kind of the self-made grave, and they light him on fire. So, and clearly, and Travis is there, and it's very clear that he's having a much harder time with this. Later on, the parents are talking, and there's this attic that goes throughout the house where Travis can kind of go upstairs and listen to what people are saying in individual rooms. He can't see them.
What do we call it? The creepy cubby?
The creepy cubby. He can't see them, but he can hear kind of their muffled voices. And we hear Sarah kind of talking and arguing with Paul, how, this was so hard for Travis. Travis shouldn't have to do this. And Paul tells her that he needs to understand how the world works now, which I completely agree. I mean, we were talking, and it's not like Travis is a 10-year-old. Travis is 17. And it's very clear from the get-go that this is a very harsh, you have to do things yourself, kind of apocalyptic almost style world. Of course, they're just isolated, so there's not too many threats coming at them, but you have to, survive. And throughout the movie, we're kind of taken through this family's dynamic. They're very self-sustaining, and it's clear that they have kind of these areas of quarantine. So before you enter the house, they almost have this like porch that they have wrapped in like all plastic. And then they have another door, a red door that always stays locked that you actually enter the house through.
It's an interesting red door, because it was like, did they specifically paint that door to mark it off, or was it literally just painted red just because it was fun? And it's painted on the inside of the house rather than like being on the outside or something.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they're like, that's Bud for you. That's what he wanted to do. It's his house.
But Travis, you can tell he's having a hard time with it. They also have Stanley, which is their dog. It was Bud's dog, and Travis has a very strong connection to Stanley as well. Then we're taken into the night, and it's clear that Travis he doesn't sleep well, and he has a lot of nightmares of walking through the house, going through the red door, hearing these terrible sounds and seeing kind of horrific things. We don't really ever see what Travis is looking at. There are certain moments that we can see specific people who he's looking at, like his grandfather or some people that he knows, but there are other moments where he just has this horrified look on his face and we don't actually see. But clearly he's very haunted by what's going on. Later on in the night, Travis is woken up by Paul abruptly and his mother saying that there's someone in the house. So they all put on their masks. They have Stanley who's barking next to them, and they're all facing the red door, which is at the end of this hallway.
Very tight hallway.
It's a very tight hallway. And they can hear someone or something moving around, rattling, and it tries to kind of open the door. Paul and Sarah both have guns, and they're, ready and basically about to shoot whoever is going to break through the door. The door breaks open. Paul shoots, and he has a rifle or a shotgun.
He has a rifle.
Okay.
Because at first I thought it was a shotgun. He shoots, and he obviously misses. And I was like, well, how do you miss? It's a door. You're not that far away. It's a shotgun. It's kind of scattered, but it's a rifle.
Okay.
So I can understand that.
So he misses whoever kind of breaks down the door. He goes in to the quarantine room that this person has broken into, and he sees this man who looks like he is probably in his late 20s, early 30s. This man has a gun as well, and Paul...
An actual shotgun this time.
Paul tells him to obviously throw the gun so that he can have it. He has this guy on his stomach and asks him, what he's doing here, who's with him. The man responds that he was just trying to find supplies. There's no one else with him. He's all by himself. Paul ends up knocking him out, and Sarah and Travis come and help tie up this man, who we find out later his name is Will. And Paul goes out to check outside to make sure that there's no one else waiting out there. He's not with a gang of people or anything like that. They get
which is also interesting to note. If you're thinking about a zombie apocalypse or something like that, and he's like, all right, I'm going to go outside. He kind of just goes outside. Whereas if you think about a zombie apocalypse, he's going to be extra careful and secret and kind of moving around not to make noise. But it's not necessarily what happens. Noise isn't really a thing.
And we never really see, it's not kind of a typical zombie apocalyptic movie where as soon as they turn into zombies, they get aggressive and they get fast. Or
so far, all we see is it affects your breathing. You develop sores and everything based on what we saw from the grandpa, and that's really
it's clearly deadly. That's what it is.
You're going to die from it, but
it's not like a zombie threat,
right? Or at least we don't know.
Yeah, we don't, but we don't see it ever in the movie.
Yeah.
It's the most, it's a terrible virus. Mm-hmm. So he comes back in, gives the all clear. And the next morning, because Will is still passed out, and like Paul hits him pretty fucking hard in the head, because Will does not wake up until the next day. By this time, they have taken Will out into the forest. They've tied him around a tree, put a bag over his head, and they've also taken his shirt too, just so they can see if he develops any sores or anything like that on his body. Mm-hmm. And we find out that between Sarah and Paul talking, that Bud, her father, started showing symptoms within 24 hours. So by this time, we hear Will screaming for an extended period of time, and we can tell it's at least been a day, because they're trying to make sure that this guy's clean. Paul later goes out to talk with Will, and he takes off the bag. He has a jug of water with him, kind of as an incentive to get him to talk, and starts probing him for all of these questions, asking him who he's with, where he came from, why did he come to their place. And Will gives him information saying that he is just a man with his wife and his son, who they're about 50 miles away.
50 miles. And prior to this, when you were talking about him getting knocked out, we just talked about how, like, I hate that trope in a lot of movies.
Knock out someone
you
with
just
the butt
knock
of a
someone
gun.
out and they're just out.
Yeah.
And then they come to. Just with something like that, like knocking someone out, that's really dangerous. And they can get brain damage. Mm-hmm. Like when someone's knocked out that long, that can happen.
Yeah.
But in movies, it's always just like just knock them out quick.
Well, and it's always a one hit.
And yeah, it's one hit and everyone's knocked out. Yeah, they have fist fights and stuff in movies, and they're fine. Yeah. Even though, like, you're obviously trying to hit someone as hard as you can, but no.
But yeah, so Will tells him that he's with his family, his wife and his son. They were staying at his brother's place, 50 miles away.
50 miles.
Which Will doesn't have a car, so he had walked
50 miles in the forest. That bothered me. It bothered me because I'm like, holy shit.
That's a long way.
That is a long way. Like you said, in the woods, walking 50 miles.
Yeah. I would not know how to get back to where
exactly.
I was.
I just, like, it bothered me because who knows how long it took him to walk to this specific spot and to find it.
Yeah.
And you could say, I think we talk about it a little bit later. Yeah. They speculate as to how they found them.
Yeah.
Which also is an issue because they continue to do the thing that possibly found them out.
Yeah.
And that's a big fear of theirs. But anyways.
So Paul asks Will about his brother because Will had said, it's just my wife, my kid, and myself. And Paul asks him, well, what about your brother? Will tells him, my brother has died. We were just at his place. Mm-hmm. Paul also asks him if he's seen anyone while he's traveling, if he knows anything that's going on in the cities or outside of where they're actually located. And Will tells him that he never saw a single person while he was walking all 50 miles. And they got out of the city as soon as people started getting sick, and they haven't been back since. So again, this gives us a little bit of a timeline where we know that it's been long enough for people to completely lose communication and for things to have shut down.
Yep.
Paul is still asking Will what he's doing here, and Will explains that he was just trying to find supplies, and that if Paul helps him or at least lets him go, he can trade some of his food for any supplies that Paul has, and tells Paul that he has chickens and goats and enough to trade with Paul. Mm-hmm. So Paul goes back to Sarah and Travis to tell them everything that Will has just told him. And they're discussing it together, and Sarah suggests that they should bring Will and his family to live there. That way they'll have, live animals that aren't sick, that are healthy, that can help give them more food. Mm-hmm. And the alternative is, if they let Will go, Will knows where they are. And like Rob had just said, one of the reasons that they think Will was able to find them was because of the fire and the smoke that produced from burning Bud, the grandpa. So they realize that they either have to kill him or they have to invite the family to live there. There's no letting him go because he knows where they live. Mm-hmm. And Sarah also says, if they come live with us, that's more people to defend our home. So people coming is clearly a threat to them. It's not a huge theme in this movie, but it's something on their minds.
Yep.
So Paul and the family agrees that he is going to go with Travis. They have a pickup truck. And so he's going to take Travis, he's going to take some water and some food, and he's going to go grab Travis's family and their animals and bring them back to the house.
By the way, when he had him like tied up to that tree, it while doing the interrogation scene, the boom operator had to sit in a tree for half the day just to record the audio correctly. So shout out to that boom operator.
Oh God, that poor boom operator. Paul and his family, they have a pickup truck. So he loads up the pickup truck with their supplies. He tells he tells Will that he's going to sit in back and you just have to tell me where to drive. And it's easy enough because there's only one fucking road in the area. Yeah. So
don't take a left coming up. What left?
Yeah, there's a scene where they're driving, and again, it's one road. And Will goes, yep, just keep going straight. And it's like, where else are you going to fucking go?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
You'll follow this for about 50 miles and then we'll be there. No.
But the other thing that bothered us though, was one, he put all the water in the back of the truck, along with his backpack with the man that he's still not sure he can trust.
Yeah. Paul puts all of their supplies in the back of the pickup, and he has probably 4 to 5 big jugs of water, which even that alone, I was upset because in my mind, I'm thinking, why are you putting all of your water on display?
Yeah.
And that's the water that you can spare for a 50-mile drive. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, if anyone were to say like, well, he didn't have room in the front. He definitely had room in the front. He had like a seating in the back of that truck.
It wasn't a huge truck, but he had enough room for all of his supplies. Maybe don't be an idiot.
Maybe it was just very messy in there.
No.
The ground, it was covered in McDonald's wrappings.
Fish fillet wrappings.
Because no one eats fish fillet at McDonald's. So, but yeah, that was kind of
that bothered me a lot.
And the fact that he goes from being overly cautious when it comes to tie him to a tree and then showing him that he has an overloaded gun and everything to, all right, I trust him. Like overly trusting in the sense of here's all my supplies. You have access to everything right now.
We said, if it were me, I would have tied his hands. I do not. There's no way I would trust that person not to like grab water and jump out and run.
Yeah. Or do whatever he wants.
Exactly.
I don't even know what's in that backpack that he had that he just left in the back too.
I don't know.
Could have been a knife in there.
Could have been a knife. Could have been some rope.
Could have been a gun.
Some fish fillet.
Could have been a handgun.
Could have been a handgun.
Who knows?
Cotton candy. So they're driving, and then all of a sudden, boom! One of the windows gets shot out, and of course, Paul swerves. He kind of crashes into a little pile of trees. They're fine, but Paul.
The trees are fine.
The trees are fine.
Good.
Everyone.
Okay.
So just
awesome.
They're still alive. A little traumatized.
Okay.
So Paul slinks down in his seat, grabs his gun, makes sure it's loaded. Another shot comes through the windows, and Paul's able to get out of the car and he kind of hides under the car, and we're able to see a man who kind of slips out from behind one of the trees. Paul shoots him down, and then we also see that Will has gotten out of the car, and he's beating another man, and Paul grabs Will off the man, and he actually shoots the guy.
Straight up shoots him.
Straight up kills him. And Will, as Paul's pointing the gun to kill him, Will says, no, don't shoot him. And then boom, he kills him. Paul, of course, gets pissed at Will because he's like, who the fuck were these men? You said you traveled, like 80 so miles from the city to here and you saw no one. And now 10 minutes into this, we see 2 guys. So he's very suspicious of Will. And he also is asking him, why did you tell me not to shoot him? Thinking that these are people that Will knows. And Will just explains to him, we could have gotten information. We could have gotten information from them if they know anyone else around here, what they're trying to do.
Which is fair.
Which is very fair. Yeah. I mean, I can see both sides of the argument where Paul's pissed and Will's just acting more normal. Yeah. Not as scared, I would say.
But I mean, I guess this is probably the most action that Paul has seen for a while when it comes to gunfire.
It's very clear that they have not seen or been around anyone but his family for a very long time. You don't see any houses around here. So they're very far out in the middle of nowhere. They end up throwing the bodies in just some random kind of ditch or hole. And they
just a fucking hole.
Just a fucking hole. And the camera kind of focuses in because you're led to believe that this was a father and son. So Paul is just kind of staring at them, basically thinking that, this in a different situation, this could have been me and Travis. They get back in the car. They eventually grab Will's family and the goats and the chickens, and they bring them back to their house. And this is where we're introduced to Will's wife, Kim, and their 6 to 10-year-old son, Andrew. The family seems to be welcoming them pretty warmly, which is, it's nice to see. But they all sit down at the kitchen table, and Paul and his family start to go over the house rules, telling him that, this is how we get our food. We try and conserve our food. We also, when we go out in pairs because, there's clearly a threat out there. There's only one set of keys, and either Paul or Sarah has them, and he has them wrapped around like a little necklace that he shows them as well. And we mentioned this too, where I was like, why the fuck are you showing him that you have the keys on you? All you have to say is, I have the keys.
Spare keys.
I have the only set of keys. And then conversation done. You don't need to show him where you hide the keys.
I guess maybe just don't go around the house looking for them or something like that. At least.
Even so, I mean, I don't know. I thought that was a mistake, but we've been in quarantine for way too long. So.
Well, I mean, I think at this point, it doesn't even really matter as to like what happens near the end of the movie that I'm still kind of questioning as to how, but anyways.
Yeah. And then he also tells them the biggest rule that they have is you don't go out at night. The red door is the only door that they go in and out of, and that stays locked always. So I think that night, Travis is having another nightmare, and he's sitting in his room, and he looks and he sees Will staring at him with completely black eyes and like kind of black, like
goop coming out of his
mouth. Which is kind of like foreshadowing.
I think most of the stuff that he dreams about is just
absolutely.
And it helps for us to kind of understand just a little bit more as to what's happening. But then again, it gets a little annoying because it's not like we don't go into the dee-loo, so that we know it's a dream. It's like one thing will be off. He'll be like, wait, wasn't he just doing? Oh, it's a dream.
Yeah.
It's a dream.
I like that. Where you kind of, the viewer is left to guess at.
I want the Arthur dee-loo.
You just said you didn't want that.
I want that now. No, I want it. I want to be just like Arthur.
Okay. So at this point, we're kind of taken through everyday moments, and we see how these two families interact in their
like a little montage.
Like a little montage. We aren't given any specific time frame, which usually that kind of bothers me, but I think they did enough relationship building and character building within this that it wasn't really an issue for me. So we see the guys bonding over chopping wood, and the families playing games and laughing. We also see moments where Travis stares almost longingly at Kim, and she's very beautiful, and like this is the first woman that Travis has seen besides his mom in probably a very long time.
Yep.
And there are certain moments where Will and Kim and Andrew, their son, will be in their room at night just kind of talking and laughing and having these family moments, and Travis is up in the creepy cubby listening to them. But I didn't feel like he was being overtly creepy, where there's some movies where you're like, oh god,
I feel like he's just longing for some kind of interaction or hearing other people and conversation.
Yeah, and there are these sweet moments between the family that Travis just kind of like laughs at, where it's like, oh, that's cute. Like, there was
a shot that I thought about it, and I'm like, I feel like if it was a different shot of him laughing to himself, it would have been a little bit more creepy. But the way that it was shot, like it looked like it was an inadvertent, like they said something funny and it caught him off guard and he went like that because he like spit a little bit. And for some reason in my head I'm like, I kind of like that, because
I liked it.
It like solidified to me that he was like, oh shit, that was funny, and laughing at it rather than just being like.
It's almost like when you're listening to podcasts alone and you laugh along with them. They have no idea. So there's one night where Travis, again, he can't sleep. So he's walking around the house. He goes downstairs and Kim is sitting at their kitchen table and she also is having trouble sleeping. So they sit down, they just start talking back and forth and just pretending like, what food would you want if you could have anything? And
learn a little bit
more about them. And at this point, Travis stares a little too long at Kim, where she realizes like, oh, this is kind of awkward. And so, but again, it's not overtly creepy. So they end up both deciding to go to bed and saying goodnight. But I just feel really bad for Travis because I don't like, it's not there's nothing terrifying about him or anything. It's so almost like sad. There's like this melancholy feeling that you are left with after seeing moments with Travis because he's so alone. So then the next day, I believe, the men are outside and they're chopping wood. Their dog is tied to a tree. And then all of a sudden he just starts barking and he's facing kind of this, it's not an empty part of the forest. It's full of trees, but we don't see anything. It's very ominous.
You can't see too far. You can see just a little bit, but not too far. It gets darker.
You can see far enough into the forest where you're left wondering what the fuck is it because there's nothing there.
Almost like you're looking like, what is there? You're
hoping to like see something. And he starts barking more and more aggressively, and Paul tries to untie him to bring him back in the house because at this point the men are starting to get a little spooked and they're like, okay, this is where it's time to go back inside. And he starts to try and untie Stanley, and Stanley kind of nips him to where Paul accidentally lets him go. And Stanley just takes off in the middle of the forest. And Travis, who's very attached to this dog, this is the one companion that he has, freaks out and runs after him.
And not only just the one companion, but like his last connection to his grandpa.
As well, yeah. And so he takes off after Stanley, and Stanley's already basically gone. We can still hear him barking, and Travis is screaming after him. We also have Paul screaming after Travis too to come back. And after a scene where Travis is just running, he stops and he can't see Stanley anywhere. And we hear the barking just keep getting louder and louder, and then it just kind of stops. And Travis hears some kind of like crunching noise or something way off, and he is just kind of standing there just wondering where the hell his dog is. Will comes up. He has a gun and he's asking Travis what happened. And Travis tells him, I heard something over there. I saw something over there. Paul comes running up too, scolding Travis, saying, what the hell are you doing? You do not go running after that dog. I know it's your grandpa's dog, but I'm not losing you too. So he grabs Travis and tells Will, we're going back. So they go back into the house, and I think they're like eating dinner or something. And Travis, there's just kind of like tears rolling down his face because he's so worried about his dog. And his dad comes to him later telling him, Stanley knows the woods. He'll be back. I promise you. But if he's not back, first light of morning, you and I will go out there. So get some rest, it's a very, as strained as I feel Paul is in his character as like trying to be tough and impervious to all of the stress that's happening, it's still kind of a sweet moment that he has with his son, like understanding like this is devastating to you. And I don't know, I like that. And meanwhile, Paul is talking to him. Travis is sketching these very creepy drawings of the forest with these like skeleton faces. I was reading something, they described it like, why is Travis drawing pictures of slender men in the woods? It kind of looks like that. But
I did note too, like I do think it's interesting that Paul didn't really say anything about it
about
either.
He looks at
he specifically sees it too, doesn't he?
Well, he looks at a picture that Travis had on his desk. I don't think it was a drawing that Travis had, but he kind of looks at and he notices what's on Travis's desk, and then he notices what Travis is drawing, but he doesn't. Yeah, which at that point, I guess I can understand you're not going to try and interpret your son's drawings.
I still think though, like at times like this, with just you and your family, you want to make sure everyone is not only physically sound but also mentally sound. So at least trying to get that dialogue. Seeing that something you're like, holy shit, are you okay? Like, not even just that, but just easing your way into that conversation. I still think that warrants some kind of conversation.
Apocalypse drawings. Or not, if your child is drawing something disturbing, maybe just sit down with them, ask them what they're feeling,
Yeah.
So then we have Paul, and he is going into a room. Will's sitting down at a desk, and Paul opens up some like whiskey, and he tells him that it was one of Bud's last reserves, and he goes to drink with Will as almost saying like, thank you for what you've done for my family, because it's clear that, you know, Travis likes these people and it's good for his family to be around them and everything that Will has done. And so they're talking, and he's just kind of asking Will, you know, what did you do before all this? And how did you and your wife meet? And they're going over that. And we find out that Will was kind of a mechanic and a handyman, worked in construction. And Paul was a history teacher, which I just think is funny.
They actually mentioned that I saw like a trivia where a prior role that he had.
He was a history teacher.
Yeah, he was specifically a history teacher.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I like that. And so they're going over it. And then he also finds out that Will mentions how he was an only child. And you can see Paul just stop.
You see that. They have like this really nice shot of both of them where they just kind of go back and forth. So it was really cool to see
Paul, like the realization come over Paul.
Yeah.
Because if you remember when he first met Will, he had said that they were staying at his brother's place.
Yep.
And Paul actually confronts him and says, I thought you said you had a brother. And Will tries to backtrack and says, well, it's actually my wife's brother, my brother-in-law, but I call him my brother. And you can see that Paul isn't happy with that answer, and he knows something's up. So he ends up taking the whiskey bottle and his glass and saying to Will that he's going to turn in.
Yep.
And this is done. So you're left with this uneasy feeling.
Apparently there was speculation that Will could be a current/former alcoholic, judging by his demeanor when Paul brings out the whiskey bottle, apparently.
Well, I thought that too, because, when Paul brings out the whiskey and Will kind of protests about it. He's like, no, we don't need to do that. Yeah, I definitely got those vibes, but it didn't go any further than that. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, that can't be a thing. That's it.
Even if it was, then okay. Didn't really do much afterwards anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like he went on a tirade or tried to
and find there's nothing past that point. So even if it was, it didn't matter. There is also another nightmare that Travis has, where he is sitting again in his room, and in his room he has his bed and then what used to be his grandfather's bed, and there's a little nightstand in between. And so Travis sits up, and on his grandfather's bed sitting there is Kim, and she kind of crawls on top of him and starts kissing him. And then as the camera is kind of looking up at her, we see her eyes kind of change, and then we see a shot of her just throwing up that black sludge in his mouth.
They love doing that in movies.
They absolutely do, because it's disgusting.
I'm going to wake up one day and...
I swear to God, if you do, oh my God,
It's chocolate.
No, I don't know.
Think about it,
that's not
You're
sexy.
Like, maybe.
No, I would vomit all over the place. And then you'd have to clean it up.
That's true.
So we have another dream. Then I believe Travis kind of wakes up, and he is having one of those nights where he can't sleep. So he's walking around the house, and then he hears almost like this whimpering a little bit, and it's it looks like it used to be like a study or an office or something. And on the ground, we can see as Travis is moving forward with a lantern, we can see that Andrew is laying on the ground, and he kind of looks sweaty too. So Travis recognizes that Andrew must have had a nightmare and, walked in there or was doing some kind of sleepwalking. So he wakes Andrew up and he tells him, hey buddy, let's put you back to bed. So he brings Andrew to his mom and dad's room, and Andrew crawls in bed with Will and Kim. And again, this is a kind of sweet moment because Travis just looks at him a little bit as the family kind of cuddles together, and he just closes the door and has a sweet smile on his face. And then Travis is walking around the house some more, and then he goes to the hallway with the red door, and he sees that the red door is cracked open. And I remember when I first saw this, I couldn't tell right away if the door was open or not, because it's
kind of hard. Yeah, it was kind of hard to see.
It's not wide open, which I really like too, because you have to kind of do a double take. It's in the middle of the night too. And so Travis is walking to the door because he's super confused. And then all of a sudden he hears some noise behind the door. So he runs to his parents' room. He wakes up Paul and Sarah and tells them that someone's in the house. Paul grabs his gas mask, he grabs the guns and the gloves, and they wake up Will as well. And they, Paul and Will go to that room, and in it, as they're looking around, they can see that Stanley's come back, and the outside door is wide open.
Yep.
And Stanley's come back into that kind of quarantine room, and he's laying on the ground, and he's just bleeding profusely from his stomach. So Paul and Will go back to the hallway where Sarah and Travis are waiting for them. And Paul goes up to Travis and tells them Stanley's come back, but he's sick. And I feel oh my God, I feel so bad for Travis because you can just see the pain in his eyes. He's such a good actor.
He was great.
Yeah. And you can just see him. He's like, well, no, are you sure he's arguing with Paul, asking him if he's sure that Stanley's sick. He tells him that he wants to see him. He needs to kind of see this for himself. Paul refuses and tells him to go grab Kim and Andrew and wait in the back room. So we see Sarah, Travis, Kim, and Andrew sitting in the back room, and then we hear a gunshot. So Paul and Will have taken Stanley and obviously put him out, and they then grab Travis, and it's kind of like almost like morning light is starting to break, and they put Stanley in one of those graves and they burn him. And Travis is there to kind of say goodbye, but it's obviously very traumatic for him as well. Because in a short period of time, he's lost two very significant beings in his life. And oh God, I fucking hate it. Anyways, so both families go to kind of the kitchen, and they're sitting down at the table and they're trying to go over what happened. Travis explains to them, I was up in the middle of the night. I saw Andrew. He had gotten out of bed, and he had fallen asleep in one of Grandpa's rooms. So I brought him back to bed. And that's when I noticed, I heard something in the other room. And he also tells him that's when I noticed the door was open. Well, everyone thought that Travis had opened that red door. And so they ask him to backtrack and explain everything that happened because they're trying to figure out who the hell could have opened this door. And we realize that Andrew is tall enough, just barely tall enough to open a lock on the door. And it's just, they literally say barely tall.
Barely.
So there's a lock, there's just a latch lock on the door. You don't need a key or anything for that. So it could have very well been Andrew. And then we have Will and Kim immediately get defensive, and they say, well, Travis, you could have been, basically sleepwalking. It was the middle of the night. How are you sure you are positive that you did not open that door? And obviously tension starts to rise very quickly between the two families, and Paul kind of cuts it and says, listen, we just need to quarantine. So what?
Yeah, well, I think what's unfortunate, I think this is where things kind of unravel, just because the fact that that door could be opened by either, but the other door can't be opened by either. The only person that could open that door, based on what Paul said, was Paul.
Yeah.
So regardless of who opened what,
Paul or Sarah had the...
How would they have been able to open up the other door anyways? It still kind of bothers me how that even happened.
I was reading it because I wanted to know what the fuck happened. And I was reading something the director said that he specifically made that because he didn't want people to have all the answers. So you're supposed to be left wondering how that happened, which drives me nuts.
I don't like that.
I like it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. There are some things that I've read too, where people try to explain how they think a certain, and some people specifically say, I think it was Travis. Mainly because one, he has these nightmares, although I don't think it's been established that he has been walking.
Doesn't sleepwalk.
Right. But they build theirs on the fact that based on the nightmares, if you connect them together, there's like a shot of Travis picking up a gun, walking out, trying to find the dog.
That would be more explainable if he was a sleepwalker, but he's not.
Right.
And all of his other dreams haven't happened, and he hasn't there's been no establishment of him doing something while he's asleep.
Right. Or even the fact of just even if he found the dog, he just leaves it in there and then it getting injured maybe he found the dog injured and he carried it back or whatever, but Did he clean himself
he would
up
have
too?
To clean himself up. Yeah. So there's all these. Yeah. But so Paul, when the two families are arguing, Paul says that the families need to quarantine. Yep. So Will, Kim, and Andrew can grab supplies that they need for a few days, but they're quarantined to their room. And Paul, Sarah, and Travis are going to do the same, which I hate that idea because if one of those people, they should have been, the only people who should have been together were Kim and Andrew.
Yep.
Everyone else it's a big house. So they have enough rooms to have everyone quarantine in a different room. Because we don't know exactly how this spreads, but after Paul, Travis, and Sarah go to their room, Paul presses Travis pretty aggressively whether or not he touched Andrew. So clearly they're worried about it spreading by physical contact, and they wear those kind of like face masks, gas masks, so that they don't breathe anything in. So at this point, you're like, why wouldn't you just go to separate rooms? But they go back. Paul presses Travis on the contact that he had with Andrew. And I feel so bad for this kid in like all the scenes because I'm very sympathetic because Travis looks at him and he goes, Dad, why wouldn't I held his hand. I took him to his room. And Paul asked, well, were you wearing a mask? Were you wearing gloves? And he goes, no, we're inside the house. We don't wear that. Oh man, so devastating.
It is interesting too because they do speculate on Travis's like psychological state. Like the parents have a talk with each other when they didn't think that Travis was hearing prior to everything happening in the beginning of the movie, and it almost implies that they're worried that something is wrong with him. But at the same time, like his grandpa is dying, if not had died at that point. So I mean, the only way I think that, but also like his drawings specifically too. That has to be some kind of red flag when it comes to his mental state. But
yeah. So that night, Travis is sleeping. He has another nightmare where he is covered in these sores and these boils, and he starts spitting up that like black bile, and he sees his grandpa sitting across from him wheezing with the black eyes. Yep. Travis wakes up in a sweat and he's just kind of rubbing his arms, and like there are just quick moments where you can still see sores on his arms and then they go away. So it's kind of like one of those lucid dreams. And then as Travis wakes up, he hears faintly, because he's sleeping in his parents' room at kind of the foot of their bed on the floor. And his parents are still sleeping, but Travis hears these faint cries from Andrew. So Travis ends up leaving their room, going up to that creepy cubby above their room and hearing what they're saying. And Andrew just keeps coughing and crying. We hear Kim and Will arguing that, Andrew's going to wake up Sarah and Paul, and they're trying to relax Andrew and tell him you got to be quiet, bud. You have to, you got to keep silent. And Andrew's it's a child who has a fever. Like you can tell. And Kim tells them that they have to go. They're going to find out, so they have to leave.
I think what makes it now that we know that the director was purposely being ambiguous, because we don't see the kid.
No.
Throughout the rest of the movie, we don't get to see his state. We hear him. The mom specifically like covers him up during certain scenes.
After this
so point, we don't really, besides him coughing and them, trying to console him and stuff. So
there's
it is
no
really
there's no confirmation that Andrew has any sickness. You don't see any physical evidence.
Additional like speculation that I've seen too is people think that Travis, like I said, had opened the door and had lied about it. I don't know, maybe lie is too strong of a word, but or blocked it out. And Will and his family wanted to leave because they knew Travis did open the door and that he is sick.
Yeah. And
that they were wanting to leave. And you could think of it like, we need to get out of here, during a time in which everyone's sleeping. And they know that they can't just leave.
Yeah.
So they have to be quiet. And maybe Andrew was scared and they're trying to console him, and then they're trying to get their shit ready or figuring out a game plan or something.
Yeah.
So that could be a thing. And then Travis just happened to hear them.
Yeah.
At the wrong time.
So Travis, after hearing that, he runs to his parents, he wakes them up, and he tells them, I just heard Andrew crying and Kim and Will saying that they're going to try and leave. Paul gets up, he opens the door slightly, and he can hear Andrew crying. So Sarah and Paul grab their face masks or their gas masks, their gloves, and their guns, and they tell Travis to wait where he is. And Travis is panicked because he really likes their family. He really likes Will, Kim, and Andrew, and he is having, a hard time dealing with the fact that now they're pitted against each other. So Paul and Sarah go and they each have a gun, and they knock on Will and Kim's room, and Paul's in front of the door, and he just says, "Hey, we hear Andrew crying. Is everything okay?" And Will responds by saying, "Yep, everything's fine. It's just Andrew had a nightmare, so sorry to wake you guys up." And Paul presses him, saying, "Well, I'd really like to see Andrew myself. I just want to make sure everything's okay." Will tells him, "No." He's like, I can't let you see him right now." Which obviously is a very, very concerning thing to hear from Paul and Sarah's perspective. So Paul tells him, "I have to insist that you open the door. This is my house, and you're starting to put me in a bad position." Then all of a sudden, Will opens the door, and he has a gun pointed at Paul. He takes Paul's gun and tells Paul to come inside the room. And the whole time I'm like, where the hell is Sarah? Because she's standing back, but she has a gun with her. Yeah. So anyways, Paul is led into the room, and Will gets very upset with him, asking him why he's wearing a mask. Like, what? There's no one sick in here, so take off the mask. So he gets Paul to take off the mask, and he tells Paul, "Listen, things aren't going great, so we're gonna leave. We're gonna take, half of the food and the water, what we're owed, and we're gonna take off. You'll never see us again. But don't try and get in our way, because if you try and stop me and my family, I will shoot you dead." So Kim and Andrew leave the room first, and right outside the room is the staircase going down to the main floor. So Andrew and Kim are going down the stairs first. Then we have Paul, who has a gun on him by Will. Yep. And as Will is starting to descend the stairs, then we see finally Sarah comes out, and she has a gun pointed to Will and tells him to put down his gun. Eventually, Will's able to convince her that they all need to put their guns down at the same time. And so they're slowly lowering their guns, and he's trying to explain to her, "We're leaving. You won't see us again, but we're taking off, and you need to let us go." As he's talking, Paul realizes that this is his chance to try and get the gun from Will. So there's a struggle that ensues there. Will screams for Kim and Andrew to run out of the house, which they do. Paul ends up knocking Will out. They are able to...
Another classic knockout.
Another classic knockout. Sarah runs down, and she kind of corners Kim and Andrew in that quarantine room and tells them just to stay there until Paul has Will tied up. Then they grab Will. They put him in the wheelbarrow, which is the same wheelbarrow that they used for Bud, because he is passed out, and they're leading them into the forest. Kim is crying, and she still has Andrew in her arms. And again, like Rob said, we never see Andrew past the point of the quarantine. Yep. And so she's crying, and Will ends up waking up. He gets up, and he has his hands tied, not behind his back, but they're tied in front of him. So he kind of staggers up a little bit as Paul has the gun pointed to him, telling him to get up. And he kind of pulls one of those fake outs where, he's so groggy, but boom, then he takes the gun.
Gotcha.
Yeah, gotcha. And he gets Paul on the ground, and he starts just wailing on him. Beating the shit out of him. And
hits that can kill someone. You hit someone in the nose like that, smashing it like that.
Breaking his nose, breaking bones in his face. Yeah, so... And the whole time Sarah's just standing there
with a gun
pointed at him, screaming stop.
And it's several beats too, and literal beats
good,
too.
Yeah.
Of just him getting wailed on. And it was almost, it made me feel, I'm like, does she just want this to happen? What is happening?
I get you're supposed to understand the struggle because it's this family that she liked, and you know, it's all that stuff. But the whole time I'm like, no, at this point it's life or death. You shoot him. So it takes her a while, but eventually, and at this time, Kim and Andrew start to run. As Kim is holding Andrew, they start to run deeper into the forest. Sarah ends up shooting Will in the back and like getting him off Paul. Paul grabs the gun and he starts running after Kim and Andrew, and he tells them to stop. They don't, and he shoots.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hear, she was really good at screaming.
That was tough.
Because we hear Kim screaming, "My baby, you killed my baby."
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me goosebumps because that was really good. Yeah. Who was it? Was it Nicolas Cage who took screaming lessons?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck him. So she's crouched over, and we realize that Paul has just shot Andrew. And then we're also taken back to Travis in the house, and he's hearing all of this. He's hearing Kim screaming and his parents, like the gunshots, all the struggle. And he's crying in the house. And eventually Paul is basically just kind of standing there thinking about, you can tell he's thinking about like, what do I do now? Yeah. Because he's past a point of no return. He's gone through
so much at that point. Like it's, what do I do now? I know what I need to do now. It's almost like the stages of denial. Like he understands. Mm-hmm. It's like comes down to like, this is it.
It's all the stages of grief. So so he eventually just shoots Kim. Yep. And then
right when she said, just shoot me.
Yeah, because she's like, you killed my baby, just kill me. And then boom, she's dead.
And at that point when he did that, Travis was standing there.
Yeah, so Travis came running from the house, and he sees Paul shoot Kim, and Will has not fully died yet, so he's slowly dying as he's watching his family get murdered. We are then just left with Paul, Sarah, and Travis, and Sarah is bawling, looking at her son in this very strangely sympathetic way of like looking at him like, this is what we had to do, and it's tearing me apart kind of a thing. So they're all just crying, and then we see Travis next, and because he doesn't look well, and he goes to the bathroom, and we can see he's kind of like dry heaving. And at that point I wasn't sure, because I couldn't remember how the movie ended, but I just wasn't sure if it was Travis who's actually sick, or if he is just like so upset with everything that's going on that he's like becoming sick because of the situation that's happened, because it's so traumatic.
That's kind of how I took it too. It's like you could think about it either way.
I think the reason that I like this movie is because it's very open-ended, and you're left with being like, who was sick, who wasn't. So we're taken to, I think the screen goes black after that. And then we hear Sarah's voice, and she's saying, "It's okay, Travis, it's okay. Just let go," which is exactly what she told her father, Bud, in the very beginning of the movie. And we then have a shot of Travis who's laying on a bed, and he's covered in sores.
Yep. That line is actually what the director had said, I guess, to his grandfather when he was dying.
His grandfather or his father? I think it was because he made this movie after his father died.
His father?
Yep.
Okay. I was just going to say, or a family member. I can't remember.
Yeah, because I just read it before we did this. But then we see Travis, and it's like he's in this dream state. So he's walking down the corridor, and then he ends up walking through the red door. And
this is the first time we see him actually walking through the red door in his nightmare dreams, because all of these like nightmare dreams are all sporadically paced. They're not all in order, because one of them shows him outside and he grabs a gun, whereas another one he's like inside on his bed, and then another one he's looking at the door, and the door's kind of like ajar, but he doesn't necessarily go in. So this is the first time he actually goes through. Okay.
Now, as a viewer, you know that Travis has died, and then we see the next shot the next scene that we see is Paul and Sarah sitting at their kitchen table, and they're on either side of the table, and there's one seat that Travis used to sit in, which was at the head of the table, which is now just an empty seat. And they're both just kind of looking at each other in this moment of heavy grief where they've just lost everything in their life. And now they're coming to the realization that they're going to die horribly too. Yep. And that's where we're left.
That's it.
That's how the movie ends, which I really like. After talking about it more and watching it again, I really like this movie. And I thought it was good.
Typically, I'm not a fan of, the ambiguous, I don't know,
I know
kind of movies.
Sometimes that really pisses me off.
Because it sounds and feels lazy to me when it comes to the director, and they go, that's for you to decide. But I feel, because I don't like that, because it really feels, like I said, lazy, in that it wasn't their original intent.
Like however,
with this movie, I kind of do like that, though.
I know. I think they did it in a really good way.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
talking about stuff like that. But yeah, so some of the other kind of things that I might not have brought up, the director explained the film's title by saying like the title came to him early on in the writing process before characters and plot were fully developed, and it stuck with him. So he said it also can represent the need to rest, but night, fear, and anxiety can take over.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the cast and crew of the film also signed a non-disclosure agreement that forbid them for revealing what comes at night. But fans and critics are pretty much in agreement that Travis's dreams are what comes at night. And then the last thing was just like the red door, like we said, the only time he goes through the door, what proceeded after that was his death. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it symbolizes, it's like a metaphor for his death, is that red door. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, like you said, the more that we talk about it and the more that we speculate, I makes me enjoy the movie a little bit more because of that. It's still kind of up in the air on
burn movie. There's not a ton of action in it, so it's not a fast paced movie, but it's a good one.
Some of the other speculations I saw too was, I think the problem too is just it's either a problem or it's not, but how people get infected is still not necessarily very clear. People talk about how the dog could have been the conduit for the infection the whole time. So the possibility that the dog actually made Bud sick, and that even though they were very cautious around Bud, but the problem is they still were around the dog prior to that. Mm-hmm. But the other thing too is we don't necessarily know how much time is coming in between. Obviously, it's not 24 hours where they meet everyone and everyone come in. Mm-hmm. But there's speculation that the dog, Andrew was the one that had gone outside, grabbed a gun with him, Travis, Andrew did it, had found the dog because he could hear it, let's just say, brought the dog back, it's hurt, injured, and through the dog is how he got sick. The dog found whatever the source is of this disease and got hurt by it. And the possibility that his drawings were like some of the beings or something that he might have seen out there were and are actually the cause. And that's what's still making people scared. It's not necessarily just the disease, but what's causing the disease. They don't talk about it in the movie, but Andrew draws it. And that's the other thing too.
It is a fear of them that like something's out there. It's not just a virus, because when the dog's barking and Travis says, I saw something out there, it's not like, I saw a bear or I saw someone out there. It was, I saw something out there. Right. And they're very terrified by that idea.
So, I mean, that's all I really got for the trivia. There wasn't a lot of trivia for this movie, but let's go into the reviews. The male audience gave it a 6.7 out of 10. Female gave it 5.7 out of 10.
What?
I still think it has to do with like how, when it came out and everything. And I think there was backlash, but prior or afterwards, I think people would like this movie.
I'd give it another chance.
Yeah, give it another chance. Okay. Review number 1. Nothing Comes at Night. 6 out of 10. This movie did a great job building suspense and atmosphere, however, led to a disappointing conclusion when nothing actually came at night. And that's it. That's review number 1.
That was it?
Yeah, that was like the most liked review. So this next one
nothing
is
happened,
actually...
so nothing to review, I guess.
This next one actually is, I think, a response to that specific. Ooh. Okay, review number 2. Excellent film, befuddling to your average Transformer fan. 10 out of 10. I already have an issue with people who put 10 out of 10, but...
Yeah, that's a whole different...
Yeah. I'm only writing this because of the astounding amount of negative reviews here, and they are all really encompassed by a thing said by the guy who has the highest rated review. Nothing Comes at Night. If you read the positive reviews for this movie, it's in quotation. Nothing comes at night. If you read the positive reviews for this movie, they like to pretend you should imagine what should come at night. I did not pay $13 a ticket to imagine anything. Props to this guy for managing to so succinctly sum up everything that is wrong about the big movie business, brainwashing people enough that they can't be bothered to imagine anything. Enough that they need everything to be served to them on it, preferably being baby food, and it preferably being McDonald's baby food.
Okay, I get what this guy's saying, but get off your fucking high horse.
Yeah, exactly. This film performs quite the amazing job of tightly illustrating the corruption of one's humanity in a film. Not only that, but said corruption happening inside a family dynamic. Go on. The mysteriousness and lack of clarification of the film serves as a fundament for building an allegory. This is not a film about an apocalypse per se. You don't get any nitty-gritty details about what the virus is, where it comes from, how many is killed, what the news had to say about it. But this is a film about a family having to withstand a powerful destructive force coming from outside and how they're trying to protect themselves from it. This is the reason why everything is left vague for the purpose of generalization, for the purpose of allegory, for the purpose of allowing the spectator to fill in the details themselves with their experiences.
Is that it?
No. The vagueness allows for a much larger array of empathy. Should the film fall short in terms of execution, then it could indeed fall flat. The allegory would dissipate. This film, however, is very carefully calibrated and is the audience that disappoints, not the movie. Okay.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. It disappoints through unwillingness to process information and sensations by themselves, but rather being locked into a mode in which they are expected everything to always be explained to them so they can be entertained and not use their brains. I like just the fact that like things are, put out of place and they're like, use your fucking brain. Of course it's that way. Think about it differently. The film begins the execution with a sick grandpa. This is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.
Oh my God.
I'll just go with it.
Okay.
The disease is in the film is irrelevant. The disease can be whatever you want it to be. It's Trump.
No.
Don't do
now
this.
you're
Don't do this. You want to know what comes at night? Well, it's Trump, okay?
What the fuck is going on now?
I don't know what's happening. The corrosion and corruption of today's world in regards to our humanity. The family dynamic is organized in such a way that what is of utmost importance is to protect the son from the disease, from the Trump disease.
Oh, God.
Stop it. From the terribleness that is in this world disease. The vagueness of it all was not satisfactory for me either. From the majority of the film. They say this and they still give it a 10 out of 10.
The director has said that he was inspired by his father's death, not Trump.
Trump.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not.
I mean, come on. You can't.
Come on now.
We can't just throw all this out.
Yeah.
When it really clicked, however, was right at the very end. As the first time that the son shows that he has a disease is right after his father shoots the child and the mother. Then he gets a nosebleed. Then he gets infected. The film is quite spectacular for having illustrated this paradox of organizing your life around protecting your son, not only to have that very organization be the thing that ultimately corrupts your son. It is a highly potent, tragic allegory, one that requires a minimum amount of thought and effort to feel. Something that is far too excessive to ask for an audience nowadays. The film offers no solutions. It just offers the proposal of contemplating this paradox. One that I'm not sure most of us are engaged in one form or another. This is why this film is so potent, because if only you would think for a moment, you would realize that this paradox of protection is universal and doesn't need an apocalypse to occur. It just needs one to be very illustrated.
Is it done?
Yes.
Oh, God. That was okay. That was way too long.
Yep.
And B, they're going into something that I don't think this movie was talking about at all.
No.
Like, I get that they're saying that because I do feel like there are certain movies that I have seen where they end up either showing the monster or whatever you want to call it, and I don't like it, and it ruins it for me.
Yeah.
So I get not wanting to show everything. Mm-hmm. I like that in movies. But I don't think this is about the Trump.
I don't know where that came from. I mean, maybe that's just their point. They're like, it is for me, damn it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I get like that, you get in your own head and you can, man corrupts himself. But I don't think, I feel like they're going a little too far up the deep end.
Review number 3, wasted time out of my life, 1 out of 10.
Oh, shut up.
Nothing came at night. But severe cases of super sickness. No killer or anything. What the fuck? And fuck is spelled with a PH.
Oh,
this is BS. I love when the people are like, what the fuck? This is BS. I mean, dang, the whole movie was them crying and scared of nothing.
Oh my God.
What happened to the world? Where were they, and why not get in the truck and travel to get gas? Because if everyone was sick, they could have gotten free gas.
Yeah, but where are they going to go? Yeah. Like, why would they travel anywhere?
Use gas to go get free gas.
Yeah, what?
My point is this. Why make a movie with a bad ending and nothing is happening? Their son gets sick and just leaves the house.
Just leaves the house? Oh no, they didn't understand.
He should have killed his wife for letting him get his face pistol whipped by someone.
Holy shit.
They was trying to help out in the first place, if you ask me.
Oh my God.
Damn. She stood there with a gun and watched the whole thing. This was the dumbest movie I've ever seen. I have never left a review about a movie and I sell them. That's how dumb this movie was. And I sell them. I had to sign up to give a real ass review for those of you who really like some real thoughts. So you're not wasting your time.
Oh, baby, we are.
I want my time back. And that's it.
I feel like that person has some emotional issues.
I do too.
Work through.
Maybe, I do too.
Go through a dictionary or something.
With that said, let's get into final reviews. Jessica, what are you going to give this?
I think for me, I would probably rate this like a 6.7.
Okay.
Yeah.
6.7.
I really liked it. And I know it's not a traditional horror movie. It's definitely more of kind of a psychological, suspenseful, I wouldn't even say thriller, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really enjoyed this. I would recommend this to people. And I think it was creepy enough to not know what exactly the virus was or who had it, where it's just you're kind of being paranoid and letting the paranoia get out of control. Yep. And that's the virus.
I agree. I'm going to give it a 6.6.
Shut up.
Yeah. I think this movie is I'm glad we rewatched this movie.
I didn't want to watch this.
I know, I didn't either.
I was like, fuck.
I think it's much more relevant today.
Yeah.
Right? I think we all have another...
Because of Trump.
Because of fucking Trump. I think we all have a new lens when it comes to contagion, kind of movies.
Yeah. Movies where it's like a virus is a real threat.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we don't need to know with this specific movie. It doesn't bother me to know what happened to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. I have a pretty good understanding. Mm-hmm. And at this point too, I understand why you want to be in the middle of the forest compared to, highly dense populations of people. So I enjoyed that. I'd say I still think the whole door thing is just I don't know if it's supposed to be some kind of paradox or something, but just the fact that he specifically talks about he has the key, he has to tell everyone about the key, yet somehow that door still got open. The dog came in. Yeah, regardless of what happened.
I guess I don't have an issue with the red door being open because, like they said,
no, and I'm not talking about the red door.
Yeah, no, I know. But yeah, with the actual locked door, I would have liked some more information on that.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
a little bit more
important.
Of explanations or something else.
I think that's pretty important. Otherwise, nothing would have happened like how it did.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny though. If you think about it, everything that did happen is a result of something that Travis is connected to. So him hearing a conversation, or him he woke up, and did he specifically wake up? Or was it because he couldn't sleep, in which he went to go hear the family talking with each other and being like, we need to get out of here?
He woke up because he woke up because I think of a nightmare.
Because of a nightmare. But anyways, if you think about it, nothing happened in which Paul was the one to find something. It was always Andrew,
Travis or
Travis. It was always Travis that
he
kind
found
of pushed
Andrew
everything along.
And well, I mean, you could argue it was the mom because she was like, let's invite the family.
Yeah. But yeah. And I think the other thing too that was just annoying is just the etiquette when it comes to being sick or being around people that might be sick.
Oh, and it's funny because we've dealt with people like that, even just with this quarantine, where you're with people and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh yeah, and I was with so-and-so. And you're like, I'm sorry, you were fuck? What?
Yeah.
Where it's no, this is a time of honesty, people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With that said, thank you so much for listening to this episode. For more updates regarding new episodes, give us a follow on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Pinterest, wherever you want to follow us. You can do so. We are everywhere. Just search for @FAD_podcast, and we'll be there. We like to post. Yeah, we like to post.
Last week it was kind of a wacky week, but we like to try and post every Monday and Thursdays.
Every Monday and Thursday. And as always, let us know what movies you'd like us to review, and we can ensure that we have it on the Spooky Spinner. Yeah. Because we got to keep these things random. So hopefully we have some bangers coming up soon, whether good or bad. So we'll let you know. But with that said, adieu to you, Jessica.
And Folie, adieu to you too.
Tell me way, blow the man down, and pray pay attention and listen to me. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a deep water sailor just in from Hong Kong. Give me way, blow the man down. If you give me some